Hello, good evening. This is Dr. Do again. It's outside medicine time. Talk about the Bible, and I have talked about the Psalm, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph. Today I'm thinking to talk about another person, Moses, who is so important in the history of Israel, in the establishment of the country. So let's just briefly review last time when I talked about Jacob. He and his about 70 people in his household moved to Egypt during the famine time because his son Joseph established very well in Egypt, the second man of the country, and the Pharaoh awarded them a special place to dwell. So after that, probably after several generations, 2 or 3 generations, Joseph and that generation passed away, and Israel multiplied, developed very well, becomes very many people, popularized. So the Egyptian took them as slaves, so they carry out very heavy jobs, carry duties, and the Egyptian eventually have the law to kill the boys or something for the Israel because they have too many. And then Moses was born. His mother, to me, I think probably very wise, and his sister. His mother put Moses in a small basket in the Nile, while the Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, was just sunbathing along the bank of the Nile. So then the basket flowed to the princess, to Pharaoh's daughter, and her servant fished it up and said it's a boy of Israelites. So the princess took him and raised him up as her own son. And at this time, Moses' sister was around and asked the princess, "Do you need somebody to feed her? I can find a woman to feed her." So the princess said, "Go ahead." And then the sister went to Moses' mother to feed him as a maid to help the princess raise up Moses. So basically this is a very special scenario. Anyway, Moses grew up as in the royal palace, has power, has talent. And later on he realized that he was not as everybody else, as Egyptian in the palace. He was one of the Israelites. And so one day when Moses grown up, when he knew he was not one of the Egyptian, and he saw his people was whipped by or beaten by the Egyptians, so he killed that person, and he knew he cannot stay there anymore because somebody saw it, so he has to flee. So he did. Flee to the other land and settle down for after decades. He just raised families and as a shepherd to attending the flocks for his father-in-law. And then one day he suddenly received a deep calling, called his name, Moses. The people are suffering, you need to go back to save them. And then he thinks, how can I? Somehow from the Bible, he probably not good in language. He doesn't speak that much. So he asked, I even do not know how to speak well. And the voice said, no worries, your brother will help you. So he went, he started his journey back. And on the way, middle of the way, he met his brother. So they both went to Egypt, back to Egypt, tried to lead his people away. That's the voice he heard. If you recall that in the burned flaming bush, he heard the message and he received the calling, so he took it and then he went back. Of course, there, if you recall, he and his brother Aaron, his sister Miriam, back to Egypt to lead the Israelite fight with the Pharaoh against 7 famines, 7 disasters, and he did a lot of miraculous things and magical, and eventually, and there's, if you recall, the Passover is what occurred during that time. he asked all the Israelites put the lamb blood on the frame of the door, so when the God come here to attack the Egyptians, they will be saved. So that's why they have the Passover. Anyway, so eventually the Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and eventually agreed, okay, you can go, take your people and go. So he took the 10,000 people of Israelites, flee, try to get away from Egypt, and then reach the Red Sea, if you recall, and Moses called for his God when he believed, and the Red Sea was separated, so the Israelites passed to the other land, and when the Egyptians come to chase them, and the Red Sea closed and swallowed those soldiers and chariots, and this is the story of Moses took his people exit from the Egypt. And at this time they do not have land, so they're wandering in the desert for another 40 years. A lot of harassment, a lot of blame, and then during this time, people pick up other gods like the golden cow or something like this. And Moses was very upset and angry, so he went to the mountain Sinai by himself, alone. And for a while, when he came down from the mountain Sinai, carried the tablet with the 10 commandments. You should. So that's where the 10 Commandments come from. And this is the brief story of Moses. I think from reading his story, I know he's not talking that much. He has a strong will. He has a calling deeply with the belief and to help his people, to lead his people, and to fight for what he believed. If you recall, there's some rebellions later on occur when they're wandering in the desert, some rebellions, and then he just used God's power to destroy those people. And after he passed away, and Joshua, who was around him since the time in Egypt, took over. So that's the story to continue, and they established the country. This is the interesting people the intriguing people from the Bible, and the next time I'll talk to you about individual stories. Thank you for tuning in, and good night.